Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Bird Brain 66 with your host Andy Teague. He's over there somewhere in the world of Zoom. I'm Brian Bretsch, and today we're excited to be joined by KMOX Sports Director Tom Ackerman. I was going to try to do my impersonation of you, and I decided that would not be cool. So welcome, Tom. We appreciate you joining us.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep. So Andy, tell us a little bit what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be picking Tom's brain about some of his memories, but I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead and share with everybody what we're going to talk about today.
We'll talk about the '87 Cardinals and their trip to the World Series, as well as the little bit of the Topps team set that correlates with that particular season and some of the great players that they had back in the day. And we had the great wooden border on that particular set, kind of emulating the 62 set from Topps. So it's actually kind of a cool set. And I talked to you about that earlier, Brian, about how this thing, you could get this thing for $5 or $10 as a complete set, before the pandemic. And now that the pandemic is hit, for some reason, this thing is going, northwards of $100 in some places. So very interesting that it's picked up the pace that it has.
Yeah, and just in general, cards have just gone through the roof in terms of everything that you're trying to collect, whether it's the 87 team, whether or not you're trying to talk about finishing off the 62 set. But anyway, Tom, I know that this was kind of right in your wheelhouse of collecting. How old were you when you first started collecting? Or maybe you don't want to divulge your age, but
no, I can divulge my age. Yeah, I would say right before that. So probably 1986. And that would be, if I recall, the caps, the team name in caps across the top of the card there, the big block letters.
Yep.
About the age that I was venturing out into the world on my bike. So age 11 would be 1986. The summer of 87, I was 12. My first love, even though I did, I was very much aware of the 82 Cardinals and went to the World Series that year with my dad. It was the 1985 Cardinals that really got me going, as many of us in our generation. It was such a great team. And I loved that team so much that I used to stand outside in the driveway and throw a tennis ball against the railroad ties. And I would hit a spot every time. That was the glove. And I would actually do an entire game. So I'd have the entire lineup in my head. I'd call the game, and then I'd also be the players. And I was, that's what we did. I mean, we didn't have iPads. We spent the day outside. So I had a bike, and in 86, 87, I got the confidence to go out and, I'd be like, bye. And I just go ride all day long. I lived in Creve Coeur, but kind of like 64 or 40 and 270, that area right by Mercy Hospital. Then it was called St. John's. And I would go down all the way down Ballast Road to Manchester, make a left, and I would hit DePere Hobby Shop. And at DePere Hobby Shop, I would go buy a pack of baseball cards. And I did this all summer long. And I would rifle through the pack, put them in my pocket, or not my pocket because I don't want to damage them. I usually have like a backpack or something. Carefully put them in there. Buy a pack or two, bring them home, analyze them. And then anytime I was with my parents, so 1987, this particular set, I have so many of them. I mean, they're just over here in the other room, a box full of that wooden background. Over and over, we'd go out to dinner and we'd, can I get a pack of baseball cards, before we go home? So 12 years old, man, is there anything better than being 12? He just had a birthday yesterday as we're recording this. William McGee. I just fell in love with that baseball team. Who didn't? Whitey Ball, 85, 86, 87. Just an amazing time to be a baseball fan. And what a lucky time for me to grow up and have that particular team be my impression of winning baseball.
Yeah, Andy, talk a little bit too about, we'll get into some more of the cards here in just a second, but right before you joined the Air Force, you and I spent a lot of our senior year scraping together money from cutting grass, either buying baseball cards, Tom, or we were slightly older than you. So we would jump in either his car or my car and fly over to Busch Stadium and walk up to the window and buy tickets. Andy, what are some of your fond memories of the leading up to the 87, like Tom was saying, because that was in our wheelhouse too, 82, 85.
Well, like you said, a lot of that going from the walk-in bike riding to the car driving, that time frame from the 82, whitey ball teams all the way up to, up through the late 80s there. And yeah, it just, you and I we hit the flea markets, whatever we could to go find some baseball cards, vending shops, and it was just, just always a lot of fun. It's something you and I have obviously enjoyed over the past almost, good grief, but almost 50 years of collecting. That shows you how old we are. Since we were about 5 years old. So.
Exactly. And that was during a time too, Tom, when you could get on your bike and be gone all day, and your parents didn't worry about you
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they had some concerns, but they knew that I'd be home by dinner. Once that sun started going down, you knew it was time to get home. And I had some friends along the way, but mostly I was by myself. I just love that freedom. There was just nothing like it. You're 12 years old, you got a couple packs of baseball cards, you got a little money in your pocket, you go get some McDonald's. I mean, there's a McDonald's right next to that DePere hobby shop. I still think about that shop when I drive by, because I don't live too far from there. I live a little closer into the city now, but I still run by there and think of those days. And I still know the route that I took exactly. And I knew when I went a little too far, and I'd kind of go a little bit further in some new territory, and then I'd turn around and head back home. And yeah, it was a little unsafe compared to today. I wasn't wearing a helmet. Had a hat on backwards, and I was just a kid running through DePere and back through up into Kirkwood, and then turn around and head back to Creve Coeur. And that was just how I spent those days. And man, what incredible times. And the first time I really learned business actually was my buddy and I had collected so many cards, and we always looked in the back of the Beckett guide as to where the St. Louis shows were, and we said, let's get a table. Like, how do you get a table? So we did. We got a table at this VFW, and it was like 100 degrees in there. But we got the table, and we set all our cards out, and we made a little money, not a lot, but it was the whole point was we had our own table, and here's all these dealers in there, and these two kids are wheeling and dealing, negotiating. I still have in these boxes here in this other room, the little price tags, the little stickers that I put on there from when I was 14 years old, when my dad dropped us off at this card show. And I thought I was a big deal, making however much money we made that day, not $100, but we thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I worked one show with a buddy of mine that lived over by the grade school, and I thought I was just the man, being able to sit behind that table. And I had a few of my cards, but it was mostly his stuff. So I love that sort of stuff. I got to ask you both this question. I've never asked this before, and this one just always cracks me up. And I'll wait till you guys answer, because I have my personal story. First to you, Andy, how many times did your parents threaten to throw your cards away because if they walked into your room, every inch of space that could be occupied by sorting of baseball cards, either alpha order or by team, how often did that happen, you think?
I think actually only once, because as you well know, my father was not a man of any leeway. So you got the one-time warning, so that was enough for me. So anytime I left the room, I made sure everything was back in place, or at least shoved under the bed. I never left anything out, because I knew that he would come in there like like the police force and take everything out on me. So yeah, I was always never left it there.
Tom, and you?
Yeah, my parents were pretty cool about it. I think I kept them in my room mostly, and I liked putting them out on the bed, so I had to clean them up if I wanted to go to bed. I had a pretty small bedroom, and the bed was where everything ended up going. So if I was to get back in bed, I had to clean them back up. But I kept them in the closet, and the collection got too big for the closet, so I had to move them down to the basement. And then I'm still fascinated with the fact that I have all these cards here in my house now. Like, I'm still hanging on to 2 boxes of commons that I actually started rifling through during the pandemic, and I stopped. And then I started up again, and I found a few gems in there. I mean, I'm like, whoa, wait a second now, but yeah, I don't know. They were pretty good about it. I think they understood my love for the game, and there wasn't maybe one or two times that there were some threats. But my dad was a huge baseball fan. He was a good man, and he definitely appreciated my love for the game. And my mom understood my love for cards as well. Man, it's fun to talk about. Those are some good days.
Yeah, I love it. My dad was pretty cool about it. My mom would just come in every once in a while because it just seemed like, I don't know why I didn't become an accountant, because I was always auditing the collection and making sure that, I had, the checklists on the back of the team cards were like, outside of the price guide, were just everything to me. So I always had two team cards, one that I could actually, check off, and then I would have the one that was in the pristine shape that would actually go into my collection. But it probably happened to me probably about once every fall.
Yeah, and I had I had favorites just for sentimental reasons that had no monetary value really, but I just liked them. So I'd have a couple of binders where I collected by team, or I collected by player, or I just thought the player was cool. And I found a couple of those too. I went through the binder. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like, that's the way I was thinking at that time. So I actually gave that binder to one of my friend's sons not a year or two ago, when I found out that I think he's about 10. He turned 10 and he was starting to collect cards. So I handed over this swing line binder with a Cardinals Kroger branding on it, and inside are just pages and pages of 1986, 87. And he was like, wow, and it was a really cool feeling just to see the look on his face.
So Brian, real quick, I remember specifically you talk about your organization. You actually had organizers that were actually for screws, nuts, and bolts that actually fit the cards, and you kept those in your closet. I remember when we go in there and open boxes of cards up, you would have those specifically arranged in those different little drawers.
Yep. Yeah, my dad turned me on to that. It was some little, it was like a blue box, Tom, that was about that big. And I had them it was A's, Angels, Astros, Blue Jays, Braves, Brewers, Cardinals, Cubs. I can do that in my sleep all day. I can't do it because of the expansion teams, but that's how I kept it. And Andy's absolutely right. My dad used to crack up. He goes, "That's what you use those things for?" Because every year I would, "Hey, Dad, can I get another one of those?" He goes, "Well, you should be down in the basement, doing some wood shop projects with me, learning how to build cabinets or whatever." I'm like, "No, I need them for my baseball card." So, but you're absolutely right, Andy. That was one of my favorite things is my dad always made fun of me, not in a bad way, just like, "Really, that's what you're using them for? It's supposed to be for screws and washers and for all that, all that other stuff." So, Andy, I'll ask you this question first, and looking at this, and then I'm going to ask Tom a fun question just based on what he said on assorting his cards. But what is who are a couple of your favorites from this 87 team?
Well, obviously you show Willie McGee because he was always one of my very favorites, during that time frame, and I'll mention Whitey Herzog as well. And every time I think of Whitey Herzog, I actually think of your dad, Brian, because if you recall that time, I actually called your dad Whitey, and he was not too fond of that, but I'll never forget his reaction to that when that happened. One thing about this particular team, though, is there were no significant, people or players standing out as far as the pitching is concerned. They had 3 11-game winners that year. Now, looking back at that, I thought that's pretty incredible that they actually, won pennant and, won the division and everything. And, 3 11-game winners. And then Tudor was 10-2 that year because he was hurt and he came back at the last half of the season. But just looking at that team overall, I just find it very surprising that they won. But didn't you look at some of the relief corps that they had? They had, guys that won 8-9 games as a reliever. So, that added to a lot of their power, going down the stretch and stuff. But another guy too, I always loved was Bob Forsch. And then I told the story last time about how I was grounded and I got to listen to his second no hitter on KMOX. In my room that's because that's what you did when you were grounded. Turn on KMOX, listen to the ball game because there's nothing else to do. And I know most kids today couldn't even relate to turn on a radio and listen to anything that over the airwaves anymore. So, but that always gave me fond memories. Listening to Jack Buck, Mike Shannon. My dad always had KMOX on too, listening to that constantly. So I just loved it.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, you're hitting my wheelhouse there. I mean, listening to the games as a kid and really all sports, I just got a charge out of listening to everything. And this time of year, you'd start listening to Mizzou basketball and I'd listen to the Blues. And I actually learned a lot of hockey from Dan Kelly, listening to games and his terminology. But going back to the Cardinals, yeah, I mean, that was the soundtrack of summer, hearing Jack and Mike. And that 87 team, to me, like, who jumps out from that team? It's funny. I think about that pitching staff also. And I think about Danny Cox. Like the moment that I think about is Game 7 of the NLCS. And when Coxie shut him out and Coleman made the final catch and his hat flew off. And I know that because I was at the game. There's Coxie right there. He was just tough as nails. And the other thing I remember about the season was, in 85, the Cardinals edged out the Mets and won the division and went on to the playoffs. And it's not like today where you can get in as a wild card. If you don't win that division, you're done. So the Mets were just not good enough. Dwight Gooden was, but the team wasn't good enough, and the Cardinals won 101 games. And then in 86, the Mets won the World Championship. And in 87, the Mets came into town. And I love that pick right there. And the Mets came into town, and the Cardinals said, "Not so fast." And John Tudor was watching from afar because he had just had surgery. And Tommy Herroff, Jesse Orozco hit a grand slam on seat cushion night, and that was the return of the Cardinals. They were back. And in 87, they gave everybody a run, and they actually, as we said, advanced all the way to the World Series and lost. And I also remember, that team was not as well regarded as 85, but they went as far as 85, exactly as far, 7 games in the World Series. And I remember distinctly being in the kitchen and watching Game 1, and Al Michaels is going through the lineup on TV, and it was like injury replacement. And he went through the whole lineup and he said, and so that's the Cardinals lineup. This is the World Series, and that's their lineup. So Jack Clark's missing, and on it goes. We know about the injuries and what might have been. So I think about that team, and everything they could have done. But they were banged up, but they were fighters and they made it through.
Yeah, I thought they would have gone a lot farther too in 86. And I was going back and just going through some notes and stuff. And I didn't realize that Jack Clark had only played about 65 to 70 games in 86. So I know that had a lot to do with them finishing below 500, because that was always a big deal that a Whitey Herzog team never finished below 500. And I know that, again, that the Clark injury really had a lot to do with that. So when we were talking about favorite cards and stuff, I know, Andy, that you showed up a bunch of them. What I really like about the set is there's some really great just head and shoulder shots of folks. We talked about Danny Cox, but this one really got back to having some really decent action shots. And that one of Jack Clark, like we all have said, that's my favorite, probably one of my favorite cards in the 80s of any Cardinal. It's a spring training game with the jersey that he has on, but there's just something about looking like Clark's rounded third and had to slam on the brakes there and hustle back to third.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure the action shot of Ozzy's great. I can't recall it, but I'm pretty sure it's a great one.
Yeah, where's Mr. Smith here?
Because you can't talk about these Cardinals teams without Ozzie, who was my favorite player.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're, oh yeah, I remember that one. Yeah. So he's shielding his eyes a little bit from the sun, trying to make a play, I guess. But going back to me in the driveway. So this time I would shift over from the railroad ties to the garage door, and I would fire that tennis ball against the garage door all day long. Boom, boom, boom. And I would, wherever it bounced, I would go get it with my glove. And I thought I was Ozzie, making plays one after the other, backhand this way. That was the guy for me. So now to be able to work with him, and he and I do some charity work together, and I host some of his events, I'm like, I can't believe I'm friends with Ozzie. It was just so, I still look at him, and the little Tommy Ackerman is like, that's Ozzie, So yeah.
So when is it in your, as you're starting to realize that, like for me, I knew that baseball, I was not going to be a member of the Cardinals or any team like that. When did you start knowing that in the back of your head that as much as I love baseball, and as much as I'm, hurling the ball at the garage or at those railroad ties, that I'm not going to be a ball player? And then when did you all of a sudden, when you were saying that you were calling the game as a little kid, when did you really think, wow, I might really want to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, I definitely always wanted to call the games regardless. So I always wanted to be a broadcaster. And I mean, from age 6 or 7, running around the house. And then, as I mentioned, doing stuff outside, whether it was baseball, football, basketball. I played basketball from a very young age. I started playing organized basketball in 5th grade and really took a liking to that. In baseball, I don't know what it was. I never was a great hitter. I never really could hit with any authority. I had a good arm, so I liked being in the outfield. I was a catcher. Wasn't a great infielder. I couldn't really aim where I was throwing all that well, but I had a good outfield arm, and I had a good arm from catcher to second. Never a great hitter though. And so I guess just kind of faded away after time. And when I started going into high school and junior high, I migrated more towards football, basketball, and in the spring, I continued to play a little bit of baseball, but that sort of transformed into golf for me. And then I concentrated much more in football. I was just too small to be, my dream was to be a quarterback. And I was my junior year in high school, I was 5'7", 130 pounds. And, all these guys are towering over me. So but after my freshman year, I stopped playing football and became the public address announcer actually for the football team. And that's really how that all started. I got very comfortable behind the microphone. I would go down to the sidelines and ask the coaches a few questions, go through their roster with them. And I started doing scoreboard updates at the end of each quarter. I'd call into KMOX. They had a sports line, 321-1111. And I'd listen to their recorded sports line and copy down all the college football scores and read them to the crowd. And I got a huge charge out of that. And there's no turning back then. That was me being a sportscaster. So when I came back from college, so I grew 4 inches my senior year in high school. And my freshman year in college, I grew 3 more inches. So I came back from my freshman year and I was 6'2", about, 190, 195 pounds. And my football coach, basketball coach, they all looked at me like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, I sprouted big time in a couple of years. But yeah, I was just undersized. I was just a late bloomer. Everybody else was athletically more gifted. Basketball, though, stuck only because I could shoot. And so I kind of hung around the basketball team because I could shoot and play defense, come off the bench, knock down a couple shots as a little guard. But boy,
pressure question for you.
Wouldn't mind being this size.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to throw this out there. So one-on-one, you or Cusimano, who's better?
Oh, Cus, yeah, okay. Cusimano. He was a good player. I mean, Cusimano played DeSmet and then Umsel. But yeah, I mean, I'm 6'2", about 210 right now. Boy, I tell you what, wouldn't that, it wouldn't have minded being that size then. But even then, I mean, I knew when my basketball coach put his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, Tommy, you'd make a great coach. You know the game. I knew right then, like I'm not a great player, but I know the game and I love talking about the game and I'm very passionate about it. And I think this broadcasting thing can happen. And I went to college and did it there and started at KMOX right out of college. Gosh, that was, I'm not going to age myself. I'll just tell you, that was 25 years ago. So I'm 46 and I still in my head think that I'm 20.
Yep, that makes two of us.
I still have the passion.
Yes.
I still have the kid in me. This is the honest truth. Like I love every day. And I hope that, people can find that in what they do.
Yep. So Andy, one of the things that Tom and I noticed at the top of the program that you're sporting, even though there's a Cardinal pennant in the background and all the great artwork that you have back there, large cards and some Wheaties boxes back there. What's up with the Raiders jersey? Is it Oakland or is it Los Angeles or all of the above?
Yeah, definitely Oakland. I'm not gonna say Los Angeles or LA. Back in the day, I explained to you guys, we got the Cardinals in St. Louis at the 12 o'clock game in the afternoon. We always got an AFC game. It seemed like every week. So it was the Raiders I fell in love with, and obviously all the it was always like the Raiders and the Chargers. So you always saw Fowler, Stabler. But I kind of clung on to the Raiders and the Stabler. But this is my Salute to Service shirt. So since this will air during the Veterans Day week, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the veterans out there. And that's the reason I wore it, not some regular Cardinal gear this week, as I usually do, and you do.
And tell everybody how long that you served. I'm extremely proud of you being my childhood buddy for joining the Air Force back in 1984, 85. So how long did you serve?
Almost 24 years or 23 years and 10 months. And now I work for, Department of Defense. So yeah, just had a long running relationship with, the military. So loved it. Love every minute of it.
Well, again, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So transitioning back to a few more memories of our Cardinals and stuff. So I guess the 87 World Series was kind of the oddball one, and you guys you can help test my memory on this. Has it ever been the same where the home team won all 4 games and the home team won all the games at home, meaning that the Twins won the 4 at the Metrodome and the Cardinals won Busch Stadium? Has that been repeated to your knowledge?
I'm not sure if it has. I'm trying to think, just run through my mind if it has. Maybe, boy, I don't know. Since then, I don't recall that being the case. There have been a lot of great ones, but not, I'm trying to think of any 7 games that went that way. I don't think so. It's possible. I was at game 6 in Minneapolis. I did not go to game 7, but my dad and his friend were able to snag some tickets to game 6, which I remember being the game that I was in the bathroom at the Metrodome when Ken Herbeck hit the grand slam, and the place was shaking. And it was a tough one to lose. I watched game 7 from home, but yeah, I thought the Cardinals were going to win that series. And when they won all 3 at home, we went to game 6 with the thought that the Cardinals are going to win this thing on the road. They were just starting to take off, even with the depleted roster that they had. So it was tough, but that was one of the loudest venues I've ever been in. And, looking back on it, it was a great Minnesota team, and Kirby Puckett's a likable player. And, everything about it was hard as a fan because we had just gone through 85. And then you had to wait a long time for the Cardinals to actually get back into the playoffs. They didn't even get back in the postseason until 96.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I'm just showing this one because this is one of my all-time favorite memories from that 87 World Series, the whole.
Yeah. I was at the game, and Tom Lawless and I have become friends, and that is incredible. And yes, the bat flip comes up all the time. And it still is the king of all bat flips. And he told me that he took, I think he said 11 or 12 steps before he flipped it. We're like, no. He goes, oh yeah, go watch it. He goes, here, I'll show you. You know, he'll demonstrate it for you. He is something else. If you go back and watch the tape, he takes, I think he's right. I think it's like 10, 11 or 12 steps. Boom, 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 walks along and yeah, just go. And then, you know, Jose Oquendo with a bomb. It was a memorable postseason.
Yeah. And Andy, for you, when you were overseas, were you able to how were you able to catch the games? Obviously on delay, or how did that work?
Well, I'll tell you. So it's kind of interesting. This whole 80s Cardinal set of teams here for me, because, you know, start out with the 82 team, you know, and I'm in the high school, then the 85 team, they're in the World Series. I'm now in the Air Force, and I'm stationed actually right outside of Kansas City at Whiteman Air Force Base. So I actually, you know, went up to game 1 of the series. And then here it is in 87. I watched the second game, first and second game here. And 5,750 miles later, I'm over in Turkey watching the remainder of the championship series and also the World Series. And they do it by satellite, and they have what they call the Armed Forces Network. And I assume they still do it that way today. That's how they did it back in the day. Well, now with streaming, it's probably completely changed. And we would get all our sporting events across the Armed Forces Network, and that would be, you know, all the significant baseball games and games of the week, and then football and things of that nature. So everybody's, you know, back in St. Louis have been watching stuff like football at noon, and we'd be watching it like 8, 9 o'clock at night. So that's how that would work. And it was everything was live. So even when we watched the Super Bowl, I think we had to over there. I think I had to we had to leave my apartment like at 3 a.m. to be there at 4 to watch the kickoff of the Super Bowl. So it was really crazy. So to watch, you had to have a newspaper first of all, and have the schedule. Newspaper, they always have the schedule in it. So, and if you wanted to see something, a lot of times it was 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. If you were off, you could do it. And if something you really wanted to see, well, you might be hurting the next day because you stayed up all night watching a ball game.
Right. So I'm going to throw up a couple more here. This guy always was baffled me. I don't know if he just got into his own head. I always thought that this guy was going to be, you know, a Cy Young winner. Joe McGrain just was very puzzling. Another guy that I was a big fan of from that era was
Greg Matthews is good. He was good on that team. Both those guys were.
Yeah.
McGrain. Yeah, Tony behind the plate. I'll talk about that trade for a second.
Yeah.
I still remember when that trade went down. So I was in the basement watching on our old TV when the Cardinals trade. Let's see if I can get this right. They get Pena for Van Slyke, LaValliere, and Mike Dunn.
Yep.
Isn't that right? Did we get anyone with Pena?
We did, and I'm trying to remember. I think we got a pitcher. I have to go back and look.
Yeah. But it was Van Slyke, LaValliere, and Mike Dunn. And I'm like, wow, they trade. I didn't, you know, Dunn ended up becoming a terrific young pitcher. But you know, gosh, Andy Van Slyke and Spanky, but Tony Pena. So you know, it's pretty exciting to have Pena. I mean, you knew all about him, and you knew his, you know, that stance. You know, this doing the splits, and just a great baseball man. So it was a good baseball team. And you know, the backup catcher was Tom Nieto. And I still remember I wrote a story. I don't know, why did I choose him? Probably because his name was Tom. But I wrote a story in his voice about clinching the division. And he actually caught the game. That's why. So Tom Nieto caught the game. Van Slyke made the catch. Is that right? 87? Yeah, I think that, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I have it mixed up. But Nieto was definitely behind the plate and caught the clincher for the Cardinals. And I wrote about it. And so when I see his face, I still think about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think Nieto's in this particular set. I don't think he comes in until the 88. Yeah, I'm looking right now. I don't see in this particular set. So one final question for you, Tom. So we're talking about the 80s in your wheelhouse of collecting all great memories and stuff. At what point then do you decide to say, okay, that broadcasting is definitely something that I want to pursue as a career?
Yeah, I mean, the experience being in the press box in high school, and then, I went on to Indiana University and started doing college radio. And freshman year freshmen really typically didn't get a slot in radio. And it was a alternative rock station was the student station, but there were some opportunities to do sports. So I kind of squeezed my way into an opportunity. Second semester freshman year, they called me and said, you know what, we do have a slot open. And I said, I will take it. And they said, terrific. So it's Monday, 3 to 6 a.m. And I said, great. And my mom was like, you're crazy. You can't do that. 3 to 6 a.m. on Monday. I'm like, Mom, I'll push all my classes off on Monday I'll register late I have to do this. And so I walked through the snow every Sunday night at 2 a.m. going into Monday, and I did a show at 3 to 6 a.m. and nobody was listening. Maybe my roommate says he did, but I don't think so. And but I did this show where I just read the weather and the time every 15 minutes and whatever new song I was playing. But that developed into doing sports. So I did games. My first game was Indiana men's basketball, Bob Knight. And I was filling in for somebody who got sick, and they scrambled and called this sophomore kid, Tom Ackerman, and said, could you do the Indiana game, the exhibition game? It's against Croatia. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'll be there tomorrow. 7 o'clock tip. I walked into assembly hall at like 3 and just so excited. And so at about 6:57, right before tip off, they finally give us a roster for Croatia with no pronunciations, no idea. And I just sort of talked my way through it. And I decided that nobody listening right now, I'm on the Indiana student station, nobody listening cares all that much about who the players are in Croatia. So, it was rebound Croatia, this Croatia scores, and it was about Indiana. And I had a great time. And I don't know where that tape is, but I do have the credential. And I still look at that from time to time. I have it in a place where I can see it all the time. It's the first game that I ever did. And I was hooked, and I was absolutely hooked. So I did college radio, started at KMOX in 1997, worked behind the scenes. And when I got an opportunity to host Weekend Sports Open Line, because Dan McLaughlin went to TV and became the television voice of the Cardinals. And so I had that chance, thanks to him. The door opened, I snagged it, and never looked back.
Very good. I was going to tell you for the Croatia thing, it's a shame he didn't have a hotline to Slobo Ilievski at the time. He could have helped you with all those.
Yeah, that's right.
He could have helped you with all
There's
those.
another team that I fell in love with as a kid. I can still remember getting my Steamers jersey for Christmas. Oh, man. Good times.
Don Ebert, Slobo,
Jeff Cacciatore. Yeah, I loved it. I was all over that team. Those games were fun.
Yeah, I went to a lot of indoor soccer games. Love the Steamers. So, all righty, gentlemen, we'll get ready to wrap up. Anything else you want to talk about, Andy, before we close the show with Tom?
Well, I want to say that I got a lot of fond memories to talking with both of you tonight, because growing up in the area, and as many years as I've actually been out of the area, and I always come back because my parents lived there. Now just my mom and my brother are there, and Brian, whenever we had a chance to catch up too, it's no matter how long you've been away from that area, it's just something special about the St. Louis area, and it just still in love with it today. The ball club, the area, the people, and it's just a different feeling. No matter where I've been in the world, and it's just St. Louis is a fantastic place, and people who haven't been there, they need to go check it out, because it's just I've always been in love with the area, and I always will be. And,
yeah, we have it's a unique place. We have some quirky things that we do and say and eat, and But that's what we're all about. But it does center around sports. It really does. I mean, sports is so important to the area. It really unifies people. I think it raises a lot of money for not only the economy, but for charity. And it does bring people together, and it is part of who we are. And that's why when we say we're a great sports city, we're not saying that we're the best team every year. We're saying that you cannot name a market where the sports teams or just sports in general mean more to that city. That we are, sports are a high priority around here. So that's why we continue to pursue PGA Tour events, why we pursue and finally landed NASCAR Cup race, why big events come here and we wrap our arms around it. And the Cardinals and Blues and the new MLS team, St. Louis City, will be a big part of that. St. Louis University basketball. It is definitely who we are. And I, as a kid growing up in St. Louis, I'm really proud that I am still here. And I think part of the reason I'm still here is just what you said. There's a comfort to it. I love traveling. I mean, I'm a big New York City guy. I love New York with all my heart. But when I come home, I am home, and I feel it feels right to me. And I'm one of those guys that loves to brag on our city and talk about the things, but you really wouldn't understand it unless you were here and sort of experienced it for yourself. And when people do, and they spend some time here, and for a lot of people, we are the biggest city around, for miles and miles. So people spend their weekends here. They get it and understand it and embrace it. And I'm very, very proud of St. Louis.
One final thought for you on that, Tom, and I never thought of this until you just said what you said. So yeah, I'll let you close with this. What does it also mean about it? What it says about a city is the right way to ask this. What does it say about a city when so many former athletes, Cardinals and Blues, and even former football Cardinals and even Rams players fall in love with the city themselves and end up making St. Louis their home?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an affordability to it, and relatively speaking. So if you're a former athlete and you have the means, it is a very comfortable place to join a country club and play golf and go. There's a lot of outlets to go fish and hike and enjoy the outdoors. The city living is great. You can get to the museums and the arts and the sporting events very quickly. Relatively speaking, the traffic is just not that heavy. I mean, we have our moments, but otherwise it's pretty easy to get around. It is centrally located, so you can get out to the West Coast if you need to. You can get out to the East Coast if you need to. There's a lot of influence. I think we do have a fast pace to us at times. There are other times, you can find your spot. It's the assortment of neighborhoods that are unique, so you can sort of get a feel one day and then go 10 minutes this way and it's a completely different town. So I think there's an attraction in that way. I think people do settle in, but it is about family. The school districts are strong. People love to live here and spend time here and put roots here and put down roots here. And I totally appreciate that and understand that. I think that it probably doesn't hurt that sports legends are revered here. I mean, if you are somebody that spent time playing sports in this town, you'll be a legend forever. And I'm sure there's an attraction there too. I mean, there's something nice about being appreciated. And we do. Is there a city that throws more banquets than we do? I mean, it's banquet after banquet, Hall of Fame this, Hall of Fame that. I'm involved in a lot of them, and we celebrate our players and our people really, really well. And I think that there's an appreciation there too. But I think mostly it's just about the quality of life. And kind of like I said, going to New York, my sister lives in San Diego. Look, I was out there with her. She's been out there for almost 20 years. I went out there one time and we went on a hike in Point Loma, and I said, people seem pretty happy here. Like, why am I not here? This is pretty nice. The weather's great. And she said, I'll tell you why. She said, because it's the feeling that I get when I come back to St. Louis. It feels like home. Not that this isn't, and San Diego is great, but, a little more green space, a little more open space. Space around here is is expensive, and you can only get so much of it. And but I'll also tell you why. She said, because you love sports, and sports in San Diego are great, but they're not the top priority. And in St. Louis, there's just it's a great feel. So when I come back home, it does feel very much like a home, and I'm so appreciative of that.
Very good. Well, Tom, Andy and I greatly appreciate your time joining us this evening on Bird Brain 66. Andy, one closing thought, and then I'll close, since I was going to turn it over to you, but you don't like to give out our handles.
I'm not as good at it as you are. No, I was going to ask, so what song did you end up hating from doing your disc jockey gig?
It's funny. It was when grunge was really starting. So when I graduated from high school in '93, and that's kind of when Pearl Jam started to come into its rise to fame. And right at that time, Nirvana was starting to pick up, Soundgarden. So I'm very familiar with that whole scene. I don't know that I ever got sick of it, but it's funny to think back, like we were playing those songs just as they were becoming popular. So yeah, it was an alternative rock station, but my friend Damon Bruce, who is now an afternoon drive host in San Francisco, he and I did a show from Friday 3 to 6 p.m. and we always ended it with, this is so silly, but we always ended the show with, "Do you feel like I do, Peter Frampton?" So and they always kind of gave us a dirty look, like it was an alternative rock station. Like, why are you playing this classic rock song? 2 reasons: the song's awesome, but also because the song is like 11 minutes. So we would play it and be like, "See ya," and then we would listen to it in the car on the way to the bars.
Nice.
And we thought that was so cool. Like, so we finished our show at 5:49. See you later. And we would every single time listen to the song in the car on the way out to do a little Friday happy hour. But those were good times, man, for sure.
Cool. All righty, Tom. Hey, everybody. That's Andy Teague over there. He's Tom Ackerman, the sports director at KMOX. Awesome that he joined us tonight. Appreciate everybody. You can find us on Twitter, at BirdBrain66, Facebook, and as well as here on our YouTube channel at BirdBrain66. So with that, everybody, we will hit stop recording, and thanks for joining.